This is recording, right? Okay. Today I'm talking about Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void. I'm doing hand things. The plot goes something like this. Well, first though, it takes place about 25,000 years before the first Star Wars movie, episode 4, I mean. And it's at a time when the Force is still being learned about. There's not really differentiation between the light and dark side. Main character is someone named Lenore Brock. She's a Jedi Ranger, or I think they call them Journeyers as well, but I think it's the same thing. Basically, she's out to patrol the galaxy and stuff, and she's basically a cross between a samurai and a cowboy. That's how I kind of pictured her, because she fights with a sword, and she also has a blaster. Because this is before they even had lightsabers, they can't really get out. They're in this system called Tython, and on the planet Tython is where the Jedi train.
Welcome to Tython, Padawan. Everyone at the temple is looking forward to meeting you.
She's given the task of finding her brother, who she long believed dead, but there's been like rumors that he's kind of doing evil somewhere in the galaxy. And as the story's being told, it keeps coming back to her past, as she remembers her brother, Dal Brock, or Dalian, I think his name is, his full name, but she just calls him Dal, D-A-L. Dalian is Lenore's brother, and it keeps cutting back to when they were both children in training. From the very first lesson, Dal is shown to basically be afraid of the Force. So much so that he basically leaves. Well, he kind of fakes his own death. And she thinks about that several times, about how she thought she had failed him and accidentally let him die. He had faked his death in order to basically leave that planet and go to another one in the galaxy. Because they can't quite leave yet, or there's not hyperspace travel, they have hyper gates. And so she's charged with finding her brother and seeing what he's up to, essentially. And she finds that he's the leader of this cult, basically, of people who hate the Force like he does. And he's trying to go to Tython, and inside of Tython, there's this hyper gate that's inside the core. Because there's this bottomless pit that people are too scared to find out what's at the bottom, but I guess it's a hypergate, and he's about to activate it, which could either allow them to go out into the galaxy to discover new life and new civilizations, or it could cause a black hole that swallows up the whole universe, or the whole Tython system, anyway. That's the plot in a nutshell. Oh, except that Lenore, she teams up with this guy who's this horrible thief, sort of. At least that's how she thinks of him at first, but then it shows, he's kind of like the Han Solo, kind of the scoundrel you think won't do any good, but then he's very helpful and he's a good sidekick for her. And he's a Twi'lek, which are the things with the things. A Twi'lek, I'll just show a picture. But he has her third head tendril that has given him crap for it his whole life because they're bullies, because they're racist. I don't know. And his name is Trey-Sana. I really like this novel. I think of the novels I've read, of the 3 I've read so far, it's probably the best. Actually, since the other things I've done are the episode 1 and 2, it's the best thing in Star Wars I've experienced since I decided to get back into Star Wars. Much like episode 2, it still doesn't really feel like Star Wars, but I kind of feel like, it doesn't have to feel like Star Wars to be Star Wars. Like Star Trek did a bunch of different tropes in their episodes and stuff. Star Wars can do the same thing. Who cares? That's what I think right now. This feels actually more like a noir. Once I realized that it was in a noir style, I kind of saw everything in black and white, except the action sequences. Well, I'll get to that in a second. It was also kind of a cowboy samurai story. I kind of see them as being basically the same. It helped that Lenore herself is basically a cowboy samurai, going from place to place, helping people and stuff. Well, as long as the Jedi Order tells her to. I really liked some of the settings. There's one planet I really liked. I can't think of the name of it, and it doesn't tell me it on this description. That was covered in this noxious gas, so everyone was living in domes. At one point, there was this dome civil war on the planet that they only kind of briefly mentioned, but just made me think oh man, I really want to read about that now. Oh, but that would be a precursor to this. And this book is the first book in the timeline. It was actually written in 2013, so it's one of the last legends books written, ironically, but it's the first one of the first things on the timeline, or the very first, other than a short story, which is included in this book. Oh, that's the complaint I have, is that the short story, it's like a precursor to this story because it's about Lenore as well, but it's at the end of the book for some reason. Why did they do that? But after reading about these Dome Wars, I was really like, I really wanted to read about those. And I was like, oh, but that's not canon anymore, and they stopped writing about this stuff. Oh well. But in the Dome Wars, not that it's really important to this plot, but I just find it fascinating. They were basically fighting for a safe place to live and trying to take each other's domes. I did really like the cowboy and noir themes. I thought they played well with Star Wars, at least in this context. And if they'd ever made a movie out of this, which they won't, but if they did, they should do it in black and white because it feels like a noir film, and it would match the tone thematically. Because if you had black and white, you never go back and white. What? I also appreciated most of the action sequences. I thought they were really cool. There was just one point when she's driving into a dome, basically with her spaceship, and Twi'lek with her. Or I think it was a borrowed ship because I don't think it was her ship. But she like crash lands into a dome, and it's like amidst everyone firing at her and stuff. It was like, we got to get in there somehow. That's kind of why the action sequences, my brain would switch over to color for those, because those actually felt more pretty much like Star Wars, and like how Star Wars action sequences would play out, especially with stuff like that. People just going doing nuts, crazy things. All until the last battle, which I guess I won't talk about because it's more or less a spoiler. That one was definitely noir though, and cowboy themed. And it was great. And the book overall, I think, was a really good read. I think even though it's at the beginning of the timeline, you should probably wait and read other things first, just because it has a lot of information to take in right away. If you're just starting out with Star Wars books and stuff, I would say wait on this one. But if you're a longtime fan like me and you've read at least a few of the books before this, not the Lando Calrissian or the Star Wars novel, but like some of the extended universe, like Heir to the Empire and stuff, you might be a bit more into it, and it might be easier for you to understand what's going on. But even with that, like, even if this is your first book, I think it does a good job of making it easy to follow and understand, even if you're not a big fan of Star Wars. And in fact, I actually think if you don't like Star Wars, you might like this book just because it has less of like the mysticism and stuff like that. It has a lot less of that, though there is some because she is a Jedi warrior and stuff. And it follows more along with like cowboys and noir themes like that, like I mentioned, and some great action. Let's get into the stuff I didn't really like as much. I think it was written by Tim Levin, I think his name was. And I think he could just get a bit wordy when it comes to describing things. I feel like maybe it could have just been edited down a little bit. It would have been a little easier to understand sometimes. Just not like the way he describes things is he'll like start out just telling you like basically this is what this looks like. This is how it was made. This is what year they made that, and like go on. It's just like too much. It's too much. He gets way into depth about describing like the planets and stuff. But like there's this one point really late in the book when Lenore leaves that planet I mentioned that's covered in gas to chase her brother, and she like just passes by this planet, but she like just basically flies. It's just like a flyby of this planet, and there's at least like a page and a half of him description just describing this planet, and like like by the end of that bit, I knew everything about that planet, but then she left, and it's like it didn't matter at all. It was like, why'd you even set up this planet to do that? I feel that Tim Lemon might think Vomit is really funny, just because like there'd be these moments, there'd be like this really intense bit or something, and Lenora, and I think just to break the tension, either Lenora or the Twi'lek character, Traysana, I remembered, would then throw up because it was like such an intense experience, or like when they crash after they crash land in that building, like I mentioned, he would like throw up, and also he would like mention just how smelly it was too. Tim Levitt, I mean, would mention like, oh, and it smelled horrible or whatever. It was like, I think he really thought that would like be funny and break up the tension a little bit, but it's not, not even the first time. Lenore, I really liked as a character. Because she's basically a hard ass. I kind of pictured her as being like a young female version of Clint Eastwood, just because she's like that kind of like cowboy slash cop kind of, maybe a bit like Dirty Harry too. Well, that's also Clint Eastwood. You know what I mean. A lot of her speech and stuff, I felt like the way she talked, it felt very much like that cowboy feel of just like she's very straight and to the point. She's kind of stoic in a way, but she can't be very emotional here and there. Just the Jedi, and the Jedi in her gets overcome with emotions. And since they don't differentiate between light and dark side, their teachings and how to deal with emotion are kind of a mix of both. Like you want to be in control of your emotion, but you also want to accept your emotions, basically, which is good advice for real people, but not for Jedi because you can turn dark, but they don't know that yet, I guess. Even though I like Lenore a lot, I hated Dal. I mean, he was a villain, so I guess you're supposed to hate him, but like really, I felt he was a lazy villain because early on, that one of their teachers only speaks through thought, and the first time he tries to telepathically communicate with Dal, he's like so frightened of it, he like shuts himself off from the whole force. But because of that, he like wants to destroy it, kind of, or like he escapes and does all this stuff, and he's just kind of evil, just because he doesn't like the force. And I feel like that's not a very good villain overall. From the get-go, he's basically the same person throughout. There's no character developed there. He's just a little jerk from the get-go. And even though Lenore, like, she sees the good in him no matter how wrong she is, because like I can see just from the get-go, he's like obviously a villain. Even before he gets to train, he feels evil to me. So he doesn't really develop as a character. He's just always kind of a jerk. And I mean, they can't all be Darth Vader, this really complex villain who ends up getting a redemption arc at the end. But this was just like, I don't know, just lazy writing, it felt like, just like we need a villain who's also her brother, but like there's nothing that really makes them that different from each other lifestyle wise, because she grew up with them. They grew up together, they're going to train together. But it's just like she tries to help him with the training because he's like so bad at it. Well, because he blocks out the force, but he does nothing but refuse her help and then fails all by himself. And he like even has this line that kind of sums it up for me. And that like he almost dies during training, and the only thing that doesn't kill him is that the teacher decides to go easy on him at the last second. But she like says that to him, and he says, "Well, at least I would die my own man," And it's just like, well, he has no character. That's what it is. He has no character at all. He's just some jerk, and he's not even a jerk for any good reason. He just doesn't like the Force. So he decides to be a jerk and be evil for the rest of his life. And I mean, it's not, I mean, other people turn their backs on the Force. I don't know. It's not, it's like the message of the whole thing is basically anyone who says the Force is flawed must be an evil jerk, I guess. It's still a fairly good novel, even though the villain's a cheesy comic book villain. It's basically what he feels like to me. My rating for this one is 8 out of 11. There's 2 short stories associated with this story. The first is included in the book. One is called Dawn of the Jedi Eruption. It's a short story by John Ostrander. It's a prequel to this book, and it's just about Lenore as she's on like a short adventure by herself. I feel like it's an early adventure for her, like maybe her first since she became a ranger. It's pretty good. Kind of action-packed, a little short, but it's a short story. The other one is also written by Tim Levin, which you can only find online in certain places because I guess it was like something, a Kindle special, and it's only like a page, maybe 2 pages long. Though both of these stories are prequels to Into the Void. I would say you don't have to read either before enjoying it, though ultimately they're kind of unnecessary. You don't need them. But they're fun to read, both of them, and they're both fairly short, so you can track them down, but without getting this book first, I'd say just read them, see if you'd want to read this book after that. Lenore seems like a cool character, though. They're short stories, so I'll just give them both 10 out of 10. Because they're so short, I don't know what to say that's bad about them.